Good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Triple Tap. Welcome, Lance. It's great to be here. Great to have you. People, welcome on board. You probably noticed there's only two of us tonight. Maybe it's only double tap tonight. Unfortunately, we don't know where. Poor old Ken having troubles with internet and whatnot, where he is at the moment. So we hope that he's doing well. So it's just Lance and myself tonight, and our special guest, which we will introduce in a moment. So yeah, so Lance, how's your week been? Haven't spoken to you for a little while, but how's your week been?
Yeah, look, fantastic Easter. You can't have a better time to spend with family.
I hope you didn't eat too much chocolate.
No. I got we had no lollies this year, but luckily, number one daughter snuck me in some chocolates, which was a bonus. Yeah, so
Nice.
I don't think we should use double tap. I don't need the overpaid, overweight security guards turning up here thinking I'm a domestic terrorist. So.
Yes. So, all right, this is Triple Tap episode number 44. Can you believe that, guys? I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us, for showing up, or for listening to our replays. We're a few behind on the website, but we will get them up shortly so that you can go back and you can rewatch any of the episodes that we've been having. So we've got some exciting people coming up as well, some new people. But tonight I'm going to read a bio of a lady who we interviewed back in episode number 15. Her name is Debbie Black. We'll invite her on in just a moment. And she's been up to some really exciting stuff since we spoke to her. Really looking forward to sharing with her tonight and hearing what she's been up to. She's just come back from a symposium, so we're going to hear about that. And I know she's probably pretty exhausted, but she's still such a trooper, and she's agreed to come and speak with us all tonight. So for those of you who don't know, let me just introduce to you very quickly Debbie Black, who's recognised as a world-leading expert in consumer corona cold air plasma medicine medical devices. It's a bit of a mouthful. Using quantum physics for therapeutic benefits across the biological systems of the human body and blood. For ongoing live research without excluding any patients, she has commenced a decentralized hybrid clinical case study unit for all willing participants. Recently advancing the original technology, she owns the patent for the world's first systemic selective aptogen, using non-equilibrium atmospheric air to create an abundance of hydrogen, H2, the master metabolizer, inside the human biology. A system which can assist pharmaceuticals and vaccines without interference or alone. It's a physics solution to human health for any age, not a chemical solution, she says. Her patient results have inspired scientists around the world. Today, she is in demand, speaking in 14 countries since her return from Wuhan, PRC, on compassionate grounds in March 2020, including an invitation to speak before the United Nations Science Committee in 2021. She has 10 years experience across 38 multidisciplinary scientific and medical fields as an independent scientist, following 16 years of academic training with an impressive 30-year career as an international chief executive across 17 countries, including 9.5 years in Fortune 50 companies and international diplomacy. However, she considers herself a humanitarian on a mission to improve global health systematically. So please, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's bring on Debbie Black. So Debbie, if you're there, turn your camera on and let's get chatting. Yeah. Debbie, I just need to ask, is that supposed to be Fortune 500 companies?
No.
It is Fortune 50 companies. Okay, I wasn't quite sure.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if I read it wrong. So welcome. I know you've just come back from your time in China at a symposium.
That's right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were doing over there and what was it all about?
Sure. Well, as you know, the whole world has been through some pretty traumatic times over the last almost 3 years. And we've got a medical device that we've been using since 1967 to help people breathe. And what we've found in independent university reports, that 97% of the people that use the technology every night, they don't get colds and flus any longer. So the opportunity to take this technology to China arose in 2015. And since then, we've been speaking and, to different parties over there and looking at the options of trying to help the people of China also breathe, because as you know, it's not their fault that they're living in some cities where there's very high pollution. It's really just the advancement, the industrial advancement, commercial advancement of the country that's caused very high pollutions inside the residential areas. And so in May 2015, I was really touched by this. And there was one particular event on the 21st where I was actually flying into Beijing, and it was very, very polluted in the skies at the time. And I had just finished doing a lot of training into each of the different chemicals that we see in the brown haze of pollution in the skies. And what I found was that I was able to see this chemical color up at 38,000 feet, which is extraordinary. We know that it's a problem between 11,000 and 17,000 feet because planes have difficulty flying in it. But at 38,000 feet, I mean, nobody talks about it being that high. And so what I found was that this pollution was that dense. And if it's that dense at that height, that means the density of it down at the street level where the people are would be extraordinarily high. And I was very, very moved to tears that the people that were living under that are going to be having all sorts of health problems, not just problems breathing, not just problems with their immune system and sleeping, but it affects the genes of a young girl, a teenage girl who's born with all of her eggs for her life. And so these will be affected because the cells can't communicate properly with each other, and they miscommunicate information constantly when you're in such a toxic environment. And so when I was picked up by some gentlemen in Beijing, and they pick up this crying Australian woman off the plane, and they're going, "Oh, what's happened? What's happened? This is really weird. What do we do? Why is she so upset?" And eventually it was translated to them that I was crying because the pollution was so thick and I was worried about the people underneath. And they started laughing because to them it's normal. And, why am I so upset about this? But it was the beginning back then. And it's been a long journey since then. And so just recently, I was invited back, and it's been hard to go back because I was locked out after in March or the last day of February 2020 due to the same border lockdowns that we've all experienced. And so it's been amazing to have this invitation to come back just now. And I've been working with the Hebei province, which is around Beijing area. So it's in the northern part of China, working with the Foreign Affairs Department there. And so there's been a number of symposiums that I've attended, all of them based with professors of scientific community in different universities, in particular the Hebei Provincial Science and Technology University, also the Hebei Traditional Chinese Medicine Administration, which is quite a lot of their leading medicos there. So they're very keen to bring traditional Chinese medicine clinics into Australia. And I'm very keen to combine traditional Chinese medicine products with our product. And why, you might ask, would I want to do that? Well, our product, our medical device, is a systemic treatment for the body. So when you turn it on at nighttime next to the bed, and then when you go to sleep, and then you turn it off when you wake up. So the whole night whilst you're asleep, this really special energetic air is actually doing amazing things inside your body in the quantum physics world, or otherwise known as the unseen world. And this is what the entire world has now moved towards. We have moved towards a new society where probably it's not the right terminology to use, but it's kind of like the whole world is at war, and they're at war in the unseen world. And these biological changes that are taking place with chemicals that we can't see, even on a beautiful blue sky, and like it's a gorgeous day in the Gold Coast today. And, you think, surely there's not any problems in this environment, but we know there is. Our food's affected, our water's affected. In fact, the entire food chain is not the same as it was 30 years ago. And So this is a whole new environment. Our bodies are not coping like they used to. So the pharmaceutical industry has brought out some fantastic medicines over the years. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have, for example, penicillin, which years and years ago people died from a simple cut and infections, and we don't die from that today. So we are living longer, but the medicines are not working in our body like they used to. And it's nothing to do with the pharmaceutical companies themselves. It's got to do with our bodies, because our bodies are changing. The cells of our bodies can't communicate with one another properly because the balance is all thrown out of whack, basically because of our food and our water and our air and the modern living we have, and the stress and the lack of sleep that we have. All these things combined has changed the dynamics of how our body functions. And so this medical device, we have 55 years experience in knowing how it works in the body, and we know it brings those foundational aspects back to balance because we work on all systems of the body at once. So people get a whole range of different benefits over time.
Debbie, your device is registered. We're going to interject throughout this so we can ask you questions. Your device is registered with the Australian Therapeutic Goods Association as a therapeutic air ionizer, but it's so much more than that, isn't it? Can you tell us a little bit about, how does your device actually work if someone was to have one of these by their bedside? What will
Sure.
it do?
Well, you actually don't know that it's doing anything. So all you do is this is how small it is, and you just put it next to your bedside table where your arm can reach it, and you turn it on when you go to sleep and you turn it off when you wake up, and that's it. And out the front of the device, there's a special energetic air that is emitted through a quantum physics vortex so that it flies really fast into your respiratory system, but you don't know that that's happening. And it bombards all the other air particles. So like an air cleaner, for example, does the opposite. It would attach to air particles, make them heavy, and then drop to the ground. Whereas this technology pushes them out of the way so it can fly into your respiratory system as fast as possible and faster than the speed of light. And we know that there's certain events that take place. So we know that, for example, we are able to then produce hydrogen inside the human body, and we own the patent on that. And so that means that when you're thirsty, you drink water, but when your cells inside your body are thirsty, they need to have hydrogen, H2. And this hydrogen is very, very difficult to introduce to the human body in the right dose that the body needs. And many people have tried, so you can buy hydrogen water. In fact, hydrogen water is a medical device actually in Japan. Mm-hmm. You can also, traditional Chinese medicine is now bringing out hydrogen in the form of a tablet. So there's many different ways that people are trying to bring hydrogen into the body, but all of those ways require certain amounts of ability to measure the dosage and then deliver the right dose per person. And it's a kind of a hit and miss thing, or whereas in the case of what we do, we're actually using the body's systems to create it. So the way that we are able to cause H2 to be produced means that every single human body will produce the amount of H2 that that body needs from that person for that moment in time. And so that's why it's quite unique. And this is why we get a lot of systemic benefits throughout human reactions to our technology. And that is using things like in quantum physics world, the benefits of light and electricity and water work together as a combination, kind of like the concrete slab. When you build a building, you put the concrete slab on first and then you build the structure. And our body's the same. So if you don't have the water, the light, and the electricity of the human body right as a foundation, it's difficult for the cells to function as they generally do in biology and chemistry, and as we know in science and medicine. So that's one of the things this technology does, is gets that foundation right so that the balance of the body can start to do its work, because we believe that if the body's in the right position that it was intended to be, that your body has the power to help you heal yourself. And the body has got the ability to make adjustments in your biology according to your environment. But it struggles to do that without this help. And so we have arranged help for the human body whilst you're asleep. So you don't have to do a single thing but turn it on. It's so much easier.
So if you, can I ask you a question about cell dysfunction, where they're not interacting correctly? Is there any correlation between that and cancer?
Oh, definitely. And also the immune system, the entire immune system. So if you imagine every single cell on the outside, there's certain communication parts of the cell that need the membrane that need to take place so that it can see something in the environment, and then it picks that up and it has to translate that. It has to make it into a language that it understands. And then it gets absorbed into the cell, or it might sit onto the cell wall, or it might get rejected. But then once it moves into the cell, then once again, the cell has to decide, how do we translate this information? Is this a food that we want to eat and consume and we want to multiply because it's good? Or is this a toxin that we need to gobble up and then get rid of within the cell? But the cells are getting confused, and they're getting confused because we're bombarding it all the time with all these environmental impacts that we as general citizens are not even causing. In fact, we don't even know a lot of what's going on unless, you know, you're specializing in geoengineering, which is one of my favorite topics, because I love to study exactly how they're doing this to our body and what they're doing, how they're getting it into the food chain, what's happening with our meat supply and our animals, what's happening with our fruit and vegetables, and why is the soil no longer good enough to grow a tomato plant or a carrot like it used to. So these things are really, really fascinating, and all of them have an end result of altering the way our cells communicate that information, which causes disease. It causes extreme chronic fatigue and tiredness, and all sorts of other illnesses and ailments that are far too numerous to even go into. And that's why in this market, in this environment, the way the world's moved today, we must have a systemic treatment for humanity. So I have the device. There is another quantum physics technology by Dr. Carlos Orozco that we are hoping to work with. And then there's also traditional Chinese medicine, and there's also Ayurveda. So these are the 4 leading products in the world that are all systemic. In fact, they can all, because they're systemic, they don't work against pharmaceuticals. So if you're already on drugs for a particular purpose that your doctor's prescribed, you can still keep taking that. And what these systemic functions will do is not interfere with that. So for example, this Mark II, this uses quantum physics. So we don't even use a chemical approach. It's an additional to whatever you're taking. And doesn't interfere. So it works well for them. And I think that's also why, I mean, we've got over 1 million patients in Australia since 1967. And I think that's why those patients, you know, I've not had one report of COVID-19 in any of our regular users. Nice. And
is that device portable?
Beg your pardon?
Is that device portable?
Yeah, well, it's portable in that you need to plug it into a power point of the wall wherever you're sleeping. So yes, it's portable to take it to a hotel. Like, for example, I took mine with me into China. I chose to live in the most polluted city of China, which is a city called Shijiazhuang in northern Hebei. And it's not modern like Shanghai or like Beijing, for example. And so Shijiazhuang is it's very different, but you know, I don't feel like I'm the person with the right values if I'm going to sit in a most beautiful home in the Gold Coast, in the most beautiful city, a wonderful country of Australia, and then export a medical device to help you breathe to the most polluted city in the world. If I'm going to do that from here, then I have a problem with my integrity and with my ethics. So the only way that I feel comfortable to talk to the people in this city is if I live there too, and if I understand what they go through. And so I made that decision back in 2017, and I have been living there as well. And, you know, I haven't paid the price as well. You know, I had to have a reconstruction on my face from an accident years ago. And so I came back to Australia because my ENT doctor said, Debbie, if you want to stay in Australia, you don't need this operation. But if you want to keep going back to China and living in the worst polluted city of China, then you need to have the operation. I said, give me the operation. Because
Debbie,
yeah.
Sorry, love.
No, go on. I was just going to say, there's millions of people over there that I want to help breathe better. And I know beyond reasonable doubt that absolutely 97% at least of those people will benefit from this technology.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Reading from your website, your Bionic Air produces air species that, when inhaled into the lungs and the bloodstream as we rest, will increase the blood oxygen levels and help us restore the body to its natural balance as we sleep. Are these machines similar in any way to like blood cleansing devices, or they do something completely different?
Yeah, what we do is we create cold air plasma, and plasma, there's 4 elements on Earth. You have solids, and if you heat up, so for example, an easy way to understand it is imagine a block of ice. If I heat up a block of ice, that matter will turn into a liquid, which is water. Mm-hmm. And if I heat up that water, it will turn into steam, which is a gas. So mm-hmm. There's 3 different elements. And then if I heat up that gas, it will become plasma. And plasma is a much smaller kind of gas, and that's what we generate. So at nighttime, on the front of the device, you can see a very small green glow on the needle itself. There's 4 needles around the front of it. And so they get replaced every 3.5 months. And that green glow is plasma, cold air plasma. So it's not hot. You can touch it. You can put your hand there and you won't feel anything but a slight breeze. When you sleep at night, you don't even know that it's happening, but it's all coming into your body. There's 3 ways it enters the body. It enters through the respiratory system. So as you're breathing through your nose or your mouth, it also enters what we call transdermal, which is through the skin. So it can come through the scalp or the face or any part of your body that's exposed to the air species. And then thirdly, it is absorbed through your hair. And so the 1 hair strand is sufficient enough to be able to absorb the species because it is so tiny. And
so
and
bald people are in real trouble.
Yeah, good one, Lance.
maybe that is natural selection, Debbie, because eventually we'll get rid of the bald people if we pollute the planet more.
Oh my gosh. Or hopefully you've got eyebrows or a bit and beard, or even just a little hairs on their face. Yeah. So Dr. Carlos Orozco talks about the little hairs on the skin being an antenna into the body to pick up what's happening in the environment and then communicate that into the cells through the hair. That's quite an amazing process that he gives another talk about for another time.
So when you get the body back in balance with your machine, and say someone's been using your machine, and what sort of a time frame will people notice, say, a difference, especially if you've got people, say, like people who suffer from, say, sleep apnea or snoring, lung issues and that at night. I know I sort of quite wake up in the morning and my lungs always feel a little bit heavy some days, more so than others. So I'm prone to, lung issues, bronchitis and things like that. So what sort of a time frame do you think, or does it sort of have an effect?
Normally speaking, you will notice that you can breathe better and deeper within 3 days. Oh, wow. And you will notice that your sleep will improve usually within the first week. It does depend on the settings that we use and what conditions the patient's got, but generally speaking, it's about that. But the thing is, it's not what happens in the first week to 3 weeks, it's what happens long term. So sometime, and we don't know this answer in science yet, but sometime between the 6-month mark and the 12-month mark, somewhere in there, the immune system is balanced and the central nervous system starts to balance. So you find people that have suffering with low mood or chronic fatigue, like great tiredness, they'll start to improve. But biggest thing you notice is that after the 6 to 12 month mark, the immune system has balanced itself so that when you now go to bed and you're feeling like a flu's coming on, or when you feel like you're getting a cold and you get a headache and you might feel a bit stuffy and you just might have a sore throat, you're feeling lousy and you think, oh no, I'm going to be in bed for the next couple of days. Well, with this technology, what happens, you can go to bed feeling like that, but then when you wake up, it's all gone and you're back to normal. And that's what happens after someone's used it consistently for 6 to 12 months on the latter side. So people that suffer very severe conditions around low mood, which I can't mention the word, so you're going to have to work that out yourself. So because in our medical registration, we're allowed to say that it assists your low mood, and that's it. And so when I talk about that particular aspect, some people that were fighting in wars years and years ago, like our grandparents, they have suffered some pretty tragic situations, and it's affected their ability to have joy and happiness in their life. And we're able to restore that. And so that does take a fair bit of time. That's probably the longest. That'll take about up to 2 years. But then once they've got to that point, they don't look back. It's given them a chance now at life that they didn't have before. And actually, at the end of this week, I'm speaking to the United Nations in Spain at a conference. This is the second time they've invited me back. And we had a very extraordinary case, which I am not medically registered for. So I'm not supposed to be talking or advertising about this particular case study we had. But the evidence we've got is hard evidence, and it's real. And United Nations is very interested in what we've been doing, as is the scientific and medical fraternity all around the world, because now they're looking for products like ours that give evidence of working, because there's results. So they care about results more than anything now. So before it used to be, you've got to have, your gold standard placebo clinical trials and double-blind clinical trials and sort of, but how do you have a gold standard double-blind placebo clinical trial on a product that works on the systems of the body? Because you can't. And the reason you can't is because to have that standard clinical trial, you have to test one illness and exclude all other illnesses. So if I want to test a device, my device, for example, on diabetic foot wound healing, then I've got to exclude any patient with high blood pressure, any patient with obesity, any patient with a number of other illnesses. But of course, most people with diabetes have those other illnesses. So you can see that it sets up a particular scenario that you're testing one narrow area. Now, that's fantastic and what you need to do for a pharmaceutical. But when you have a medical device that's working on systems, that's the opposite way around. We want to know the more comorbidities the person has, the better it will work. And so we don't want to exclude anybody, which is why I set up my own clinical unit so that we could monitor our patients that choose to be a part of it. So it's voluntary. And, we have over 100 patients in there now, and they're just writing down their observations every day. And it's great. We're getting lots of really good feedback, and, they know that their health's being monitored regularly by us. It costs them nothing to do that. And so when I say their health is being monitored by us, I'm talking about their health in relation to the use of this particular medical device. And so that opens up great doors for them. But in Spain, we had a woman who had an early stage breast cancer. It was a stage 2 lobular infiltrating invasive carcinoma of the breast. The tumor was 5 centimeters deep into her breast. And from the time, she still followed all of her advice from her oncologist. The oncologist gave her the advice to go and have a surgery to have the tumor removed. But up until the time she had surgery, she was 4 weeks at home worrying about what's going to happen. And so she started using our device, and I don't know if it was going to work. We've not done that before. So she said she'd already been a regular user, and she said she would like to try it. So we decided, well, let's monitor the tumor, just have an ultrasound every 4 weeks at the same place, the same time, the same radiographer, the same machine, ultrasound machine, to reduce variables. And we would then monitor what the size of the tumor was. And we found that it reduced by 20% by the time she had surgery. So we thought, wow, that's really interesting. She had surgery, then afterwards the tumor was removed from her breast, and then it was sent away to the pathology labs to be tested, and all cancer cells were gone. And so the report came back that she's cancer-free. And like, this was just really unheard of, because in that 4 weeks, we were placing this medical device at a close distance to her skin, and we were treating her where the tumor site was through the skin without any excision. And so this case and the evidence of that case has sparked the attention of quite a lot of scientists and professors around the world, in Germany and Japan, in Italy, Brazil, China, America. And so I'll be releasing that to the UN on late this week, Thursday, Friday.
Wow.
And then, and then next month, I've been invited to Japan to speak and to basically do the official launch to the world on how we're producing hydrogen inside the human body from cold air plasma air species, which is a special energetic air.
Wow.
So
Debbie, do you
it's
believe
all
that
unseen?
do you believe your patient who had that done, had she been able to continue that treatment for a longer period of time without having the surgery, that she might have eventually not even needed the surgery at all?
Oh, I wouldn't go so far as saying that, because that could be really dangerous. The big challenge in cancer that oncologists have all around the world is you can have the same type of breast cancer in 10 different women, and the cancer will behave differently in every single one of those women.
Yeah.
So
depending on their health.
the big problem with cancer is it's a culmination of the type of cancer and the type of woman and her genetic makeup. And so there are so many, I would never ever say you've always got to follow what your doctor's advice is, and you've always got to follow your oncologist advice. But there is nobody that is able to help a woman or a man that's just been diagnosed that has to wait 4 weeks before surgery. There's nothing that they can do. And all I'm saying is that this technology might, and the evidence we have so far, it could certainly open a door for, or I should say might open a door for us to be able to provide some assistance and support to those people, so that they don't feel like there's nothing that they can do for 4 weeks from the time they get their news to the time they have surgery. It's a long way before saying, you would have to do clinical trials on much larger numbers of people to know.
We noticed on your website, just for our listeners there, we have put your website on there if anyone is interested in going to bionicair.com to have a look at Debbie's medical devices. Debbie, I noticed you've got two reasonable sized devices on there, a Mark III and a Mark II. Can you just explain the difference between those two, just for anybody who is going to the site and potentially looking at one of your devices? I noticed one you showed us was the Mark II, just then, the white one. Can you tell us the difference?
Yeah, the Mark II has a biological range of 2 meters. So it will work for 2 people in a double size or queen size bed, but in a king size bed, you would need two machines. With the Mark III, it works on a 9-volt battery as well as a power point, but it only has a biological range of 1 meter. Also, the Mark III can be taken to, for example, a library running it on a battery, but the challenge with that is that you need to wear a grounding strap to be attached to the machine, whereas the Mark II, you don't need that because it's just at the bedside table. The most important way to use the technology is whilst you're asleep, because when you're asleep, all the active systems of the human body stop, and all the restoring, repairing systems of the body start. And we want to tap into those systems because we can help those systems function better. And so whilst you're sleeping is the best time for us to help the body restore. And what illnesses you have or conditions you have is immaterial, because we believe that if we can put the body into its natural state that God first intended for us, then, you know, your body has got the capacity to heal itself, and it has got the capacity to respond better to the pharmaceuticals or vitamins or whatever else that you're taking to help yourself. So, and so that's what it's all about. It's just giving a bit of power back to the consumer, I think, to be able to help them to be able to find that sweet spot of good health, where they don't have to eat like a rabbit and live on carrots, or go to the gym and sweat like a pig.
One other little device that I did notice on there, which I noticed you have out of stock, I'm not sure if they're going out or whether you're going to bring them back, but you have some Alanra air pendants, the smaller ones. What do they do? Do they do something similar? Are they for wearing around the neck or?
Yes. Yeah. So you wear them around your neck, and what they do is they will basically give you your own fresh air bubble, but it's more than air cleaning. It's producing that cold air plasma, which is helping your body to restore. So they were specifically designed for aircraft travel, but unfortunately, due to some events just prior to COVID, we've had to stop producing them. So we're hoping to have them back on board as soon as possible. So we're just looking for some support from an investor to be able to do that with that particular technology.
Yeah, excellent. Or maybe one of our listeners knows people with some investing opportunities. They might be able to get in contact with you, Debbie. Certainly, there's some people out there that have got a lot of money and they want to do good things with it, and so maybe they might be able to get in there and help you with that. So it's certainly exciting what you're doing. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been really amazing to in China, just, as you know, I was only going to be there for about a week and a half, but it ended up having to extend the trip. So I've been there for just over 3 weeks, nearly almost 4 weeks. And as you know, I got back early this morning. Yeah. And so I've spoken to many very, very intelligent people, and having to be questioned at an academic exchange, also getting right into the scientific theory, because it was a real challenge, because I've studied 39 different scientific and medical fields in order to advance this technology to what it is today. And you can't go to university and study that. So, I've had to, but then I haven't gone and learned, for example, all of engineering. I've only gone and learned engineering for the specific part that relates to my technology. Or, and they were questioning me a lot about, well, how did you find this out? And how did you work out that? And how did you do this? And all that sort of thing. And when I told them the answers, they were looking at me as if in disbelief, but it's true. So like one of the things as we're talking about was, well, how does the species move around the body? And I'm talking about water memory, how we impact water memory. And then I started talking about what my findings was in scientific study of oceanography. So if you imagine the whole ocean around the earth, and then you think of one human body. So the heart is the equator, the North Pole of your fingertips, the South Pole is your toes. And in between, there are currents that flow all around the ocean. There's currents that flow all around the body, fluidics, we call it, like water and blood. And there are parts of the body that have good potassium, and there's parts that don't. And there's parts that have really good, oxygen, and parts that are deprived. And it's exactly the same as the ocean. And inside the ocean, there are all these microbes that also, and bacteria that are there, designed to be there to bring the balance back. And same inside our gut. Our gut is our second brain, but our heart runs our body. And so, it's all the same. So when I can't find the answers that I'm looking for, because biology and chemistry doesn't have it, I was able to go into oceanography and look at what they've studied, and I found the answers. And it was like that in a whole range of different sciences, in which if you only learn one field of your expertise and your interest, unfortunately, that's great. You'll be an expert at it, but also it means that you'll have blinkers on of boundaries and you won't be able to see outside that. So sometimes it takes people that don't have that really deep knowledge of that expertise to think of something completely different and apply that into medicine, and it works. The world of the
So,
unseen,
Debbie,
I believe, is it's a world beyond science. In my belief, I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible clearly tells us about in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in the beginning, the Spirit hovered over the waters. And so we know this interpretation of this energy that existed before energy existed. So the answers to what I've been looking for in science, I've already found in the Word of God first. And so I can provide through faith, add a dimension to science that makes my results very unique globally, as opposed to scientists that do it the other way around.
With the lack of God. Yeah. So, Debbie, is there anything in nature that produces plasma in a natural process?
Only one place that I'm aware of, and that is the Northern Lights, or the aurora above the Arctic Ocean. There's the sun gives off a corona discharge, which is very hot, comes flying towards the Earth. But the Earth has these massive magnetic fields. And where the corona power hits the magnetic fields, which is at the top of the Earth and the bottom of the Earth, you'll see these beautiful green glowing clouds all around the sky. And that's plasma. That's cold air plasma. Mm-hmm.
Have you done any research into their air quality as a result of the available plasma, or does that increase plasma availability in those areas?
You mean above the Arctic Ocean?
Yeah.
Yeah. We know enough in science to know that if you could put your body 200 kilometers above the Earth and sit inside the plasma cloud, you probably wouldn't get sick of anything. Your body would be restored quite regularly on an ongoing basis. But it's kind of impossible, because you would have to have legs attached to your body that are 200 kilometers long to reach the Earth, because you've got to be grounded.
So with your technology, is there any point in upscaling this device to, like, I can see all the ladies wanting to go to a spa and have a plasma session in a plasma chamber. Would that be beneficial to them?
No, because you can, there are lots of plasma available in the world now. It's a growing industry. It's emerging. It's only about 9 years old industry. It just so happens that our technology had a foundation that made it really suitable to the advancement of where it is today, that we were able to do that on our existing medical registration and with our existing patients. And we've got really good responses. So we're the only one in the world who has this technology with experience in humans. There is a lot of new devices being created. There's a device in Germany right now that's amazing. It completely changes the entire Band-Aid industry. So if you get a cut, and a surgical cut, or even a cut, you can just get this device and, like Star Trek, go across the skin, and it immediately, heals itself as it goes across the cut. It's really cool. So there's also another machine in, where was it? I think it's Belgium. And you can put rice seeds or sunflower seeds or anything that you want to put into the ground, you can put through the plasma machine. And just by putting the plasma light into the seeds before it goes into the ground, you can increase your agricultural production by 20%. So It's extraordinary. Using plasma into going into where else? Rockets, to be able to help a rocket get back to Earth at a faster speed without having to use electrical energy, is also being used quite extensively now. So they're using plasma to sterilize water. Where else? So there is pretty much every field that you can think of, there is now emerging new plasma technologies. One of my really key things that I'm really looking forward to is working with some of the leading professors in China and Germany in a group that I put together in 2018 to resolve environmental pollution. So we believe that we already have got the answers for that. And all we need now is to make sure that we are able to start getting some runs on the board with actually showing the evidence of how we can totally make a change to the pollution that comes out of a chimney, whether it doesn't matter what industry it is, but using plasma for that. And but that requires a lot of investment from those companies. So we're currently hopefully be launching that in the next 6 months.
That's incredible. So plasma's going to have a big future for quite a while, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it's definitely got a huge future, and it's just going to take a little bit of time for people to get their head around it, because it's an unusual kind of technology. And also the way that it's used, there's lots of different devices on the market, and but they're all very responsible. They're doing a lot of scientific research. We're just very unique in that we've already been in humans. We had the very first medically approved medical air ionizer back in 1967. It was registered in the early 1970s. So we're just very fortunate to have had 5 decades of experience in humans before the industry effectively commenced. But that also, in latter days, we've been able to advance that technology now. So the abundance of the species is more targeted. It's there's more of them, and it just means that the results for humans is a little bit faster and broader.
So if I can ask you a question about China. Now, we know air quality in the world improved dramatically over the COVID lockdowns because industry shut down. And China's a big polluter. They're a developing nation. Is industry taking an active role in mitigating or trying to reduce the amount of pollutants that they're letting out?
Yes, there are. Very contrary to what you read in the media, the Western media doesn't really report what's happening on the ground over there that I know about, because I live there and because I go there as often as I have. There's laws over there for pollutant industries that are polluting the atmosphere. There's certain times of day they're allowed to operate and not operate. There's certain things that they have to do to bring it into line. They've got to treat it to try and make sure it's more steam water coming out the tops of the chimneys. And the reasons for this is because the chimneys are within 1 block of residential communities. So they're very, very close in many of the cities. And in some parts of China, they've done very well at it, and others they're still really struggling. But yeah, there are laws, and I believe that China really is making a concerted effort. I mean, if you look at the tree growth around central China and central India, they've planted more trees than anyone else in the world. And that's significant when you look at what's happened in America with the Amazon and other places. So, yeah.
Look, we can have a very skewed view on China because, in general, a lot of people don't travel there. And if they do, they go there as the tourists, so they don't see the day-to-day runnings of the country like you would, enjoy and be exposed to. Tell me, what's it been like? You were there when COVID started. What's it like now for the country? Has it returned to a pretty normal status?
Yes, it has. I think the only, is from my information or from what my experience is, Shanghai has had the more difficult time in more recent days with COVID. And I have to question, because Shanghai has the highest proportion of returning expats from the US and UK. And so you kind of question, why is that? Is that, were they injected in their countries and then returned, or or, you know, what, I don't know. But, you know, certainly in the other cities and other provinces, you really only hear about COVID deaths that have affected the elderly who already had very weak respiratory. But the elderly in China, they live longer than we do. They, you know, they can live well over 100, and you know, they've got a very good life because they're very healthy living with Chinese medicine.
Yeah,
and so
diet.
yeah, their diet's amazing. So there's very little meat in their diet. It's predominantly vegetables and fish. And when I say there's very little red meat in their diet. Yeah. And but also, you know, the biggest thing about China, and I'm now talking from a Westerner's perspective, is the connection between the people is incredible. It's so deep in their culture and as a foundation of how they live, that there's, you know, if anyone ever said that somebody in China would hurt another Chinese person or another Chinese family deliberately, other than being mentally disturbed or being on some kind of a psychotic drug that caused them to behave in an irrational manner, there is nothing, you would never see that. That just won't happen, because the love and the harmony is central to everything that they do in China. You know, you look at, I'm not talking about the China that used to be many years ago. I don't know about that China, the ancient China, but I do know about the China of the last 15 years. And they will do anything and everything to maintain harmony amongst the people, amongst the businesses, amongst the industry. They'll do anything that they can to keep that connection between the people. And the connection is so strong that if President Xi ever said, if President Xi ever said, oh, look, you know, I want everyone to hold their right arm up and face the north at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you know, everybody would do that. Not because they're being told to do it or threatened, because they respect him. You know, it's a harmony and respect within the country that is so deep-seated, and it is so beautiful. And when you see that and experience it, you don't see people talk about each other and you know, cause problems on social media for kids. That's very rare. You just don't, and I know there are some rules in place to help govern that, as far as, you know, if you keep treating people bad and you're caught doing that, then you'll lose points, and then all of a sudden you won't be able to catch a train ticket, or you won't be able to book a plane ticket because you'll be penalized for it. I mean, they're great systems to have in place for adults that need to be controlled like a child, because they're a country that's so huge. I mean, how else would you govern a country unless you can have good behavior as part of the culture, and which it now is. So
yeah, they don't suffer from some of those diseases that we do in the West, like drug addiction and extremely poor behavior in public, and all the woke nonsense, transgender. I can imagine there's not too many transgender transitioning clinics in China.
Yeah, it's very rare. It's very, very rare to see trouble publicly, and because they shy away from that. I mean, to give you an example, I mean, as a businesswoman in my previous role as an international chief executive, I mean, I've been working overseas Monday to Friday most of my life and returning home weekends to Australia. So I'm very well internationally versed, but there's no other country that I know of that has this deep-seated behavioral, cultural connection between the people like the Chinese people have between one another. And like I say, it's really, really beautiful. And it also means something. So as a business leader, for example, if I'm in China and I have a problem with somebody around the table, I cannot be assertive like I would in Australia and bring it up. Maybe, you know, and I cannot embarrass that person. I cannot cause them to lose face in front of other people, because if I did that, that's really frowned upon in the culture. So what I would have to do is I'd have to pull that person aside silently, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and then confront them and say why I'm not happy with what they did and what I would like to see change. but I would never, ever do that in front of other people and cause their reputation to be damaged.
Yeah, maybe we need more of that in here, Debbie. We need more of that in Australia.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, so it is a really, really beautiful culture, but you don't see all that unless you live there. Even when you just holiday there, it's not something you'll really see and notice so quickly. But they're putting a lot of money into medical research and science, and they really do support their young scientists, their academics at the universities. They've got a lot of government support there. I get supported there as far as, if I need any help with any research or, no problems asked. They're the first to come to the fore. Whereas here in Australia, they're only going to help me if I hand over my patent to them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've only got a few moments left, Debbie. Where next to for you? What's the next step for you? What's the next?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'm doing my PhD, and I'm studying the nexus between eschatology, neuroquantology, and epigenetics, which means that I'm looking at faith first. Looking at eschatology means the prophetic word of the Bible. So what the Bible's talking about is going to happen in our lifetime, and there will be changes coming up, and there's going to be a lot more adjustments made in society over the coming years, and people need support. And I believe that my research and my PhD thesis at the end, when I've completed it, will give people hope and will give people a direction on what to do as our bodies change more and more through the environmental impacts in epigenetics. And also neuroquantology is all about quantum physics in the neurosciences. So that will be focusing on how quantum physics is related to the changes of our mental state. So, for example, the sheer number of aluminum particles, which is over 15,000 times more than it should be in our air, is going to cause a much larger degree of earlier onset Alzheimer's and dementia over the next 5 years. And so I believe that understanding where that's coming from and why, and where our future lies, is a real key to giving humanity hope. And that's what I'm focused on. My device looks after itself, so I'm happy to talk to scientists and medicos around the world, which I do all the time. And I'm more than happy to keep doing that and keep providing the technology to them through the people that support me. But, my focus right now is on giving humanity hope.
Excellent. Debbie, I just want to know.
I think that's awesome.
Sorry, Lance.
I really do. I think that's awesome. If I can give you any advice on your PhD, do it quickly, because we're seeing prophecy fulfilled at an accelerated rate.
Yes, very much so. You're right. I'm totally on board with you there.
Debbie,
Dr. Mark Lee has got a lot of really good books on that.
Can you speak? Can you speak Chinese? Can you speak any Chinese if you spend a lot of time there?
Yeah, I was having private lessons before I left in March 2020, but yeah, I've lost a lot of it over the last 2 years by not practicing. So yeah, I've got to go back to it again.
Excellent. Well, Debbie, look, we're out of time, but it's been an absolute pleasure again finding out what you've been up to. And by the sounds of it, you've got some exciting things coming up as well. So maybe down the track, we'll have to get you back again and then find out what you're doing again. So absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us this evening. Lance, thank you for being here with me as well. And to each and every one of you, thank you for joining in, listening, finding out what we're up to or what Debbie's up to, and joining us on Triple Tap. If you want to watch any of the replays, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/@Triple Tap. It's also on our Telegram page, and it's also on our website, theaustraliaproject.org. We've just got the last few to catch up on, but most of the rest of them are all there for you to go and listen to. So please do like and share them around, and we'll see you next time on Triple Tap.
Okay.
Bye for now.
All right, God bless.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Ainsley.
Bye-bye.